Hey Kirk, let me ask you something. What's one thing you see operations teams doing that actually makes their sale day worse?
Adding more drivers to the lane actually could compound the problem. And now you've got a dry lane in another lane.
Wow. Can you meet me at the gate?
I'm Rich Levene, and this is Meet Me at the Gate, where we're not just talking theory, we're tackling real world problems head on, driving solutions that supercharge productivity and team dynamics. Every episode is a journey towards improvement, empowering you, the manager, to lead with innovation and confidence. Join us to transform everyday roadblocks into highways for success.
If your lane goes dry, your profits go with it. Great cars, strong buyers don't mean a thing if the sale flow breaks down. Kurt brings the data, the science, and the practical know-how behind optimal lane flow. How many sale days drivers does it take to run a sale? It's like, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop?
Yeah, so I think the better question is not how many drivers does it take, but how many cars do you have to have in queue? And
Ah,
so, yeah. So what I mean by that is actually we did years ago, and my good friend Ray Priest, he's actually the GM out of Denver. He was out at Mannheim, Seattle. This was like years, this is probably 18 years ago. And I had a team of Georgia Tech industrial engineer students. We flew out to Seattle, and part of the project was to optimize the sale day flow. And one of the things we did was we put them on top of the roof with video cameras. So this was before all the AI and all the different stuff. And so they videotaped multiple sale days. I think we flew out there twice and videotaped, so we got tons of footage. And so one of the objective was to figure out in optimizing it, like, what how do you answer that question that you just asked? And what we found was that obviously when a lane goes dry, the retention and the sales percentage drops, right? Why? Because the buyers scatter, right? But then we also found in reverse that if you have too many drivers in the queue, the drivers get spread out. So like one of the age old, thoughts is that when it rains, the buyers go into the lane and your sales percentage goes up because it's raining outside or whatever. But we kind of mathematically proved it that there's a number that you need. And that number is probably 7 drivers, 5 to 7 drivers you need in queue. So typically inside of the barn, you've got 2 to 3, depending on the length of your barn
yeah.
or arena that you're sitting on, and then you need probably 3 to 4 that are sitting outside. So that gives enough time for the buyers to view it quickly before it moves inside of the lane. And so how you determine now, to your question, how many vehicles are in queue is, well, it depends on the pace that the lane is running at, right? So every lane, a typical commercial lane will run at 30 to 45 seconds, and a dealer lane will run 45 to like a minute 15, minute 30, right? So they're a little
Yeah.
bit slower, the pace, right? And you've probably seen that,
Yeah.
in your sale that you
Yeah.
run, right? So typically what if there's no constraint out in the flow, right, outside, then the time that it should take once the car exits the barn and it gets back to the lane, the walk time to the next car that they get into should be pretty consistent. The only thing that you're really pacing is what's going on in the barn. So that's where I've for years have worked with sites, basic methodology to determine based on the pace of the lane, the distance they have to travel, and then the makeup of how long it takes to walk to the next car and managing the lanes, that how many drivers you need to keep that 5 to 7 vehicles in queue to optimize your lane. So
Gotcha. So what'd you see going on with buyers? Like, so you got 5 to 7, or what? I think that's the number you said. What
yep.
what were the buyers doing that you said, aha, this is too many cars? What was their behavior?
Well, what we looked at was the total cars in queue, and so we're basically measuring in real time. Like lane one, it's got 7 in queue, it's got 8 in queue, it's got 10 in queue, it's got 20 in queue, and then we looked at what the sailing percentage was inside of the lane, right? And then we kind of normalized it based on previous weeks to say, well, obviously based on the market and different things that are happening, there could be like an adjustment. So it's sort of like a regression analysis that was
Yeah.
conducted to kind of isolate down to just the impact of the cars in queue. And that's the observation. You could actually see the buyers would leave the lane and they would walk out and they kind of get almost lost or whatever, walking to that 20th car out in the queue, but that does nothing for you, right? And so like one of the age old issues, you hear all the time is a lane goes dry. And so the general manager or whoever goes out and tells the ops manager, don't ever let that lane go dry again. So what's the first thing that a ops manager does? He adds more drivers,
Yeah.
right? But the issue is that if you've got a constraint variability in the flow that's moving through, adding more drivers to the lane actually could compound the problem. And now you've got a dry lane in another lane,
Yeah.
right? So adding drivers to your lane is not really the answer. It's finding the constraint in the flow. And really what you need is a concentric flow. So when that car exits the barn, there's no stopping until it gets right back, right? They're not. So I've seen in the last couple months, I've been and I've observed two different sales, and both of them that ran pretty good, but there were a couple points in the sale where the lane went dry. They both had dry lanes, or there's where you see all of a sudden it starts to go dry and then a bunch of cars hit it once. And so that starts telling me that if there's this variability where all of a sudden there's two cars and then there's eight cars in the lane, there's somewhere that something's bunching up. And so at one of the auctions, I found that post sale, they were parking cars on the exit side of the barn, that all the cars were kind of stopping. And it could only be for 5 seconds, but that 5 seconds compounding times five other cars adds up, and then that's what bunches the cars as they're flowing through, right? And then at the
Yeah.
other auction, it was actually at the corner of their lot, so it wasn't near the barn, but it was one of the corners where all the cars were going. That it was like every 5-10 minutes. So that's what I do is I go around and I find that point in the system that we have to alleviate. Maybe we got to take a couple cars off, make it to where there's no blind spots, even from a safety standpoint. And once you get that concentric flow, then it makes your lanes run very effective.
Chaos doesn't warn you, it just shows up. One car dies, one phone call gets missed, and just like that, every lane backs up. This segment is all about the prep work that separates clean sales from total disasters. We talk contingency plans, real-time communication, and why every auction needs a game day huddle. If you're tired of fixing problems on the fly, this is the blueprint to get you ahead. A couple of weeks ago, we had that exact problem. A car died on the exit side, and where just the path that the driver took, he went right down the middle of the exit lane, didn't stay to one side or the other. Car dies, and the next thing you know, I had 20 cars backed up all the way into the arena, backed up every freaking lane. I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
And I go out there, and it took 2 seconds for me to push the van out. It's just like, dude, put it in neutral. Let me push out of the way. But what happened is everybody started reacting, and every horn was honking like, go, go. I'm like, oh, somebody's just got to get out the old-fashioned elbow grease, push the van out of the way, and move on.
So that raises a good point. Is that I believe a successful sale and sale day is the day, right? It's the big event. We're selling the cars. That's the day that everybody kind of lives for. We're making our money. Usually I think it's like 63% of all the money an auction makes comes from the buy and the sell fee, right? That comes out of the lanes or whatever. So it's the day that it counts, right? But a successful sale day is not just the sale should just run. It should be automatic, basically.
Yeah.
It's the preparation that before the sale day that I think is the most important. So it's mapping out those points. It's role playing. Well, what if a car broke down? What are we going to do? Do we have a person positioned to immediately jump in and address it? A lot of times what happens is that failure point occurs and they're like, oh, and then it might only happen once every 26 weeks. So then our memory, we forget about it. But in a sense, we should be kind of role playing or planning for where potential failure points. And then we're putting strategic people right in those areas as jumpers or flaggers or people that can jump in and resolve those problems and learn from it. So like the sale that you had is now that that's occurred, like I'm sure you're not going to let that happen again, right?
Well, here's what we did. So it happened from a couple of things. So I've gone out and I've hired a couple of newer people to the organization that have zero auto auction experience, which I love because now they bring a different perspective to the table, right? They can challenge our assumptions. Well, the car dies on the exit side, and I get a call from one of them says, hey, what am I supposed to do? He called it his oh shit moment. Oh shit, the car died. What am I supposed to do? And I started thinking about it. And living extreme ownership, I took responsibility and said, look, I obviously didn't tell you. When you're on the block, you need to know who the lane captain is. Lane captain knows who you are. So let's fast forward it. So I immediately implemented our new game day meeting. And I bring
Okay.
everybody into the arena at 9:30 in the morning. Sales starts at noon. And I said, all right, who's lane one? Who's my lane one captain? I got that person. All right, who's on block on lane one? Great. Who's my mechanic for lane one? Great. You three get together, start a group now. Anything goes on, we need to be proactive. If a car's not going to make it in order, I need you to let us know ahead of time. And so we did that for all the lanes. And at the end of the day, it was beautiful. But, a couple of them asked some questions because some of them had never done. They said, hey, what if I get the car in order? I said, well, I'm going to ask you a simple question. If you're the customer and I say, hey, Kirk, car number 13 is probably going to be a couple cars late because somebody messed with it and they pulled a fuse and I had to get it back in, but it's on its way up here. And then the car makes it through on time. You're like, wow, cool, right? Now I gave you a heads up. I was proactive and I was telling my team and some of these newer people, these people, if we don't ever tell them what's going on and we just do what we always do and all the cars come through in order because we're good at what we do, they're never going to understand the chaos or the skills or the operations, the processes that we have to go through to make it happen. If you tell them, hey, car number 13, somebody just jacked with, and it's going to be a couple cars late. Hey, car number 35, it just ran out of gas or who knows what. Anything can happen. But you start telling them these things and keeping them abreast of it, they can make a quick note. And then when it comes through, they're pleasantly surprised. You're setting them up for the expectation. Of course, if you say nothing, we all expect every car is going to come through on time in order.
Yeah. Well, I think the other piece is we run the sale, car gets through, and we consider that success, right? Success is the car sells. So if you start thinking through all those different things, like, for example, the car running in order, right? The car not breaking down, right? The car flowing, the X amount of cars in queue, like a perfect sale, all these operational things that you're doing are setting up our probability to get that car sold, right? That's the moneymaker. That's what it's all about, right? So it's like, I think what you're doing, like that game day meeting or whatever, is how do you get the team excited and motivated towards understanding the little action that they're taking, getting cars on spot, like 24 hours before the sale allows buyers to view the car, right?
Yes.
Like even weeks before, right? Before that car's in inventory and it's moving, and we realize it's got a hole in the tire and we got to plug the tire and we can get a service and tow truck. So now it's not on the lane and all of a sudden the tire goes air right before the sale and it doesn't make it because of something we could have addressed a week earlier, or it needs a battery or something of that nature. There's things, that's what's like beautiful about the workflow system, is that if we design it in a certain way with certain checkpoints, everything's building up to that kind of cherry on top, which is that car sitting on the spot on the left line, ready to go. The label is perfect on the car. It's not cockeyed. It's perfectly set up. It's got that promotional sticker. You crank it, it's ready to run. There's no tires, right? We know if there's our issue lanes and what cars are issues. So we've got jumpers that are out 5 vehicles ahead, already starting it, ready to go. Does the vehicle need gas? Right? That's something a lot of times it's like we didn't want to put gas in it and then it dies. Well, we just blew a massive opportunity for that car making it through, right? And so all those little things, right, in training your team to get that car through, I mean, it could be the difference in 5 cars, 10 cars, some of these auctions, 20 cars a sale, selling just based on operational things that's in our control, which is beautiful.
Big sales are built on small details. From a deflated tire to a missing sticker, the smallest things can destroy buyer confidence. Kirk and I dive into how operational precision, before the cars even hit the lane or the block, can mean the difference between being sold or not sold. You're running a lane and you have a lane captain. And I tell my lane captains, you guys should know every car in here. And if you don't, that's a problem because you've parked the cars. You were out here all week long. You were helping with the CRs. You're doing all these different things. You know which car needs a jump. You know which one's got the slow leak in the front right tire. You know which one where the seatbelt doesn't work like it's supposed to. You know all these things, but why do you wait until right before the sale before you tell it? So I'm trying to work, and I love using, as much as I despised them, I love using the New England Patriots analogy, and I learned that Tom Brady was more of a leader than Belichick, but it came from the
Okay.
two of them balancing each other out. Belichick had the process, Brady had the leadership. But what they would do, the Patriots would practice the goofiest things in the world. They would practice on how to run the ball back to the middle of the field to hand it to the referee because it was the difference between having 1 second or 3 seconds on the clock at the end of the game. And these little
There you go.
things like that. And I try telling my team, like, where are all the little things we can do that adds up to, like what you said, putting gas in the car so it crosses the block so we can make one more sell. Because we need that buy fee, we need that sell fee. That's what pays the wages. That's what keeps the lights on. That's what makes the cash register ring. That's our Black Friday, if you will.
Yep. Yeah, no, 100%. One other kind of cool like football analogy or story like I tell all the time is the supposedly Nick Saban, right, the football coach for Alabama, their team scores a touchdown, right? And after they score the touchdown, he throws his hat on the ground, gets upset, and they ask him after the play or after the game, why were you upset? You scored a touchdown. And he's like, well, my right tackle's left foot was misaligned. And the reporter was like, why does that matter? He was like, because we botched the play. We've been working on it all week. And my right tackle's left foot started the play, right? And he's like, I don't really care about touchdowns, right? We're going to score them if we execute the play more time than not. And that's kind of similar, like out in the field. It's what you're talking about is that we've patched the tire. We've, you know, the battery is fixed, the car is ready to go, all that kind of stuff sets us up. And the touchdown is the car sells in the lane, right?
Yep.
And so it's all those little right tackles, left foot moments of focusing and getting the process dialed in that sets us up for success, right? And that's what you see all the time. Like, you go into auctions, operations meetings, and what they talk about is, oh, we sold, 65%, we sold 70% or whatever, right? And that's great, but what did we do to sell 72%? What could we have done operationally to get us better next week, right? Those are the
Yep.
conversations that really count. So right
a
on.
piece that we added in, I think I've covered with you before. So there's three things we're doing at our sale. So number one is build a culture where people want to be. Number two is be 1% better.
Yep.
Number three is grow the sale to be what I call 50-50. I implemented right after I got there what we call the high five award.
Okay.
And we nominate people every week, and it's got to come into me, and then I'll say yay or nay. Trust me, almost every time I've said yay. I don't think I've ever said nay. But what it is, it's for the person, if we're going to use the football analogy, it's for the person that got their left foot in the right spot to make the block so that we can score the touchdown.
Awesome.
And we hand those out. We've had people jump in. A couple weeks ago, the inside coordinator for Fleet Lease was out helping clean the lanes before the big sale. He didn't need to do that, but he was waiting on a couple things to get done. He had an hour of free time. So what can I do? He went out and cleaned blocks, wiped down the counters, got the TVs all ready to go. Because then when the block clerks come in, guess what they go? Oh, wow, look, I got a clean area. And then they feel better about what they're doing. So it's the little things we can do.
That's awesome.
And we call it our high five, and we give them out. I've given a high five out to an entire department before because they've had to step up. Detail shop came and drove cars one day. They didn't have to. They're sublet detailers. They could have said, you know what, we're going home. We're going to do we need our production, whatever it is. They jumped in and said, yeah, we need you to sell more cars so we can have more cars to clean. They jumped in. They all got a high five.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think the environment at an auction is just amazing. Just the culture and the family environment and all that is so unique to like any other business because it's almost like every week is like a football game. And you win enough and you've set that vision and that goal that there's a championship at the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
And everybody on that team, you've got your wide receiver and your quarterback and everyone's got different positions, but they're all playing towards something great, right? And that goes hand in hand with like what you're saying is that if you get everybody working together where they see the big vision where it's not, oh, that's not my job, right? They understand that it's about that car crossing and that car selling. And that's what's cool. And in this topic, I mean, like talking about sale day activities and everything that goes in, there's a lot that happens every sale day, right? And so it's like getting that right and getting the muscle memory every week. But I think a lot of it, it's everybody understanding what goes into it, but it's sort of like role playing what leads into it and then what comes out of it. And I think even after the sale, like recapping what worked well, what didn't, and it's almost like a dress rehearsal. It's a
Yeah.
play, and then afterwards, how could we have done better for the next one every single week? And a lot of it's just preparation, right? It's knowing your
Yeah.
failure points and knowing what you need to do to succeed.
Culture isn't a buzzword, it's your competitive edge. You don't build championship auctions with a checklist. You build them with people who care. In this chapter, we talk about how to drive ownership, pride, and purpose across every role, from the lot techs to the lane captains. Learn how we use tools like the High Five Award to create unity, energy, and results that last past sale day. High performers hate mediocrity, and mediocrity hates high performers. And then going, doubling down on that, I spend every week, we're running 3 lanes right now at our facility. I'm on block 2 every week, smack dab in the middle, writing down. 1, it's because it's my favorite lane. 2, it's in the middle of the building. But it gives me a shot to look at everything that's going on. For me, that's game day. I'm in the booth. I'm up in the stands. I got my binoculars. I can see how things are flowing. I can see the lane behind me, the lane in front of me, and then, of course, the one I'm working on. Are the cars coming through? How are the bidders? Are we getting activity? What's the market doing? Does the internet work? Are the TVs working? All those little things. And then it never fails about, if I was the head football coach at about, third quarter, down goes the clipboard, off goes my hat, and away I go running somewhere. It's like, come on, yelling at somebody because they didn't put their right foot in the correct spot to, we might have sold the car, but it's like, still, we can do better. We can do better. And usually what happens is it'll be a car in front of me and something crazy comes in. Like they forget to put an exempt sticker on the car because it's a 2009 and the miles are exempt, or they're 1 digit off in the miles. It's like, guys, we caught it on the block, but how can we go from check-in to CR to parking the car to sticker in the car to bringing the car in, and then I'm number 6 and I see that the miles are wrong? It's like, come on, we got to be better than this.
One thing you brought up as well that's good is that it's sort of like you've got to have a control point in your sale. And so a lot of times it's like during the sale, you have 3 lanes. I mean, I've worked in sales that have 30 lanes, that are operating in double blocks, and you're feeding multiple cars, and just it gets really complex really quick within the flow. But it comes down to, no matter if you're running 1 lane or 3 lanes or 30 lanes, you've got to have a control point to make sure that you've got communication from the block out to the lanes, right? And then you're observing what's going on. And so that's where it's good. I always believe that you've got your ops manager behind the barn that's observing what's going on with a radio. And a lot of times, if they could be in an elevated position to see back on the lanes. So one of the things too is that having the lanes where a lot of times they've got a cart or they've got something that they're operating with. Like I'm a big visual type person within operations. If the technology goes down, we still need to operate. We need to design systems and things that no matter what happens, we're set up for success. So that with your lanes, they've got flags or something. So I can see that, hey, they're halfway through the lane. They've got a radio. If something's going down, they're communicating in to the manager who can see it and make adjustments and all. And from there, another kind of best practice is many times if the lane is running too fast, you can control the auctioneer speed by actually setting up, pacing the cars going into the lane. A lot of times you'll see the cars, and this is like a safety thing, the cars will get right up on top of each other, bumper to bumper. But if you put a good 5 feet in between them, it automatically will slow the lane down a bit. And that right there will pace the lane better. But things like that you can set up, channel through your ops manager and channel back. I got a lot of stories. I worked with the industrial engineering team from Georgia Tech. I probably managed like 30 different IE Georgia Tech industrial engineering teams over the years. And I worked with a professor who actually, and this has always got my mind thinking in this way, to where a lot of times auctions, what they'll do is they'll staff to the max amount of drivers that they need in that lane. But the lane pace and queue could change throughout the lane. The lane may start at 45 seconds, and then you have sellers that slow down later in the lane. And so all of a sudden the queue gets bigger or smaller or whatever, or you have a lane that maybe ends earlier, right? And so then what we do is we take all those drivers and we put them on another lane, and then those lanes
lane 2
seriously back up. Right. They all go to lane 2, right? So with this professor, which always got me thinking, is he would study insects and within insects have algorithms, like the honeybee has an algorithm. And so what we were trying to do at one point is take the honeybee algorithm and apply it to sale day drivers to say, if I could
Goodness.
send them to the optimal lane, where would it be? So that would be very difficult for a driver to get back and just like, I mean, if you had the technology to know, but that's where having that central point of command where you can see, I can see the lane queue getting bigger, and maybe I pair lane 1 and 2 together. So lane 2, I can see is starting to go faster, right? In the communication from the block, maybe I can send a driver to from lane 1 into lane 2 if it's walking distance. If they could go get in a car and help keep the flow going. And one of the other kind of best practices that I see all the time is that after the sale, we start PSI. And most likely, when a lane goes dry, we'll take those drivers and we'll just scatter them to the next lane. Well, if you could take, especially if you're running temp where you have a 4-hour minimum, you can
Yep.
take those drivers and say, help start identifying solds, start moving them to an area to help with the PSI flow, right? Of getting
Yeah.
those cars moving, right? Is another.
Yep.
But you kind of hit on it. Having that central command to be able to level load drivers potentially between lanes, see what's occurring, and then communicate out back either the information from the block or from the lane to the block or the block to the lane is critical.
Tech doesn't sell cars, people do. AI can optimize your flow, dashboards can show you all the numbers, but at the end of the day, someone still has to jump the car, solve the problem, and shake the buyer's hand. From honeybee algorithms to AI enhanced lane strategy, Kirk shares the tech that helps, but also why humans are more important than ever before. I'm reading a book right now that's pretty interesting, and I'm not going to say which one it is because I'm going to wait till I finish it. But one of them, they were talking about doctors in ER rooms, in surgical rooms. And this is just, I just had this aha moment because I've been listening to the book the past few days. But they were talking about how they were talking after the New York Marathon, or was it the Boston? It was the Boston Marathon. After the Boston Marathon, all the wounded came into the triage room, and so they were talking about how they were doing it. So right now, just let's just talk this through. We have robots that can perform surgery. My daughter's boyfriend is one of the techs that teaches people how to run the Da Vinci robots to do surgery. So you could say, hey, look, we're not going to need doctors anymore. We're just going to do this all with robots, right? We're not going to need physical options anymore. We're going to do it all digital. All right. Just like you're never going to get rid of a doctor, I don't think you're ever going to get rid of a physical auto auction. Now, we're going to give them ways to do parts of it digitally, but I don't think it can ever go away, no matter how hard we try. No matter how good you make the robot, it's not always going to be able to do the surgery. Because in this book, what they were talking about is they had people that came in that deserved, based on textbook doctoring, what it said in the medical books, amputate above the knee, take this guy's leg off. But because they were in Boston, because it was the Boston Marathon, they said, this person's a runner. What if we did this? And the doctors did it. It took 8 surgeries, not 1, but the guy's back running marathons again. So, right? If you would have had a robot in there, what would have happened? What would have happened with the robot? Oh, robot says cut your leg off here. They would have done the surgery, cut the rope. So digital, it's just, there's the human element that I don't think we're ever going to get rid of. But now we're going down a rabbit hole, so we'll drop that for another podcast. But help me out so I can build an intro for you. Give me the deets. You were worth the big M for how long?
So was with the Big M for almost 19 years, going on 20 years, and spent the last 10 years running outside operational excellence team at Mannheim, designing most of the technology and processes for that company.
Using Georgia Tech engineers to help you.
Yeah, how I started, it was really interesting story. When I came into the company, I was actually came in through the sales department, and Nick Peluso, he was actually the one that hired me. He was the head of sales for Mannheim, and for whatever reason, he was like, "We're going to hire this guy, and he's going to end up on our national sales team or whatnot." And so I spent over a year at an auction, working through every department, going through the management training group. And then I spent a year at the corporate, rotating through every corporate department. And while I was at the auction, one of actually my very first projects, I was standing out there and I was watching sale day. And I was like, this is super inefficient. Like the lanes are going dry and things are going everywhere. And I was like, I have no idea. I'm like right out of college and I'm like, I have no idea how to solve this. So I started looking at colleges and I looked at Georgia Tech and they had an industrial engineering department. I started talking to people and they had like this capstone project team. And so I got 6 industrial engineer students, brought them down to the Atlanta auction, and we redesigned the entire sale day flow and how the cars that were going out, they had a big, right in the middle of their different lanes, they had a big roadway. So what would happen is halfway through the sale, the cars had to cross the roadway to get to the other side because everything came into this one big roadway, which created all this variability. So halfway through the sale, all the lanes started going dry. That's what we discovered. So the industrial engineer team built a simulation model of the flow. We redesigned the sale day, cut sale day drivers, and basically solved their flow issue, right? And while I was there, that was one of the big projects that did. And then was when I was working through, I basically wrote like an SOP book on every single department as I walked through. So when I got back to corporate, one of the departments I was in, I had the book sitting next to my desk, and the CEO of the company walked in and he looked at it and he was like, "Can I borrow that?" I was like, "Sure." And so he took the book, and the next day his like executive assistant sets up a meeting with me and him, and I'm like, "Oh no, I'm like a year in and I'm probably done or something." I had a 30-minute meeting with him. Like he was like, I guess just getting to know me. And I was supposed to end up on the sales team. And after it was like a month later, my rotation was done. And he was like, "Kirk's not a sales guy, he's an ops guy." And so he put me on the OpEx, the best practice team, the original best practice team. And that was like the next 19 years. All I've been doing is focusing on how to make auctions more efficient and better. And from that point in that project I had with Georgia Tech, I was like, this is awesome. And so I started every semester, I started with one team and then I got up to 2. And then at one point I had 5 industrial engineering teams rolling. It was like 40 IE students from Tech I was managing. So I'd do my day job, and then at night I'd go down to Georgia Tech till like 11 o'clock at night. And I was like managing all these students. And the head of the program actually called me, and he was like, "Kirk, we only have 20 teams." And he was like, "You're monopolizing all the teams." He was like, "You need to back off a little bit." But what it taught me was how important data is, because all these teams, to run regression analysis or do simulation or do these things, they had to have data. So within literally every step of the auction process, I had to go get the data. We had to understand it. We had to organize it. And basically, I think it was like something like 200,000 hours of work, basically for free in a sense. We got partnering with Georgia Tech, giving them great projects, but it was incredible learnings. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so one of the things I love data too, and what I'm challenging myself on right now is the difference between adaptation and mitigation. Like, right, with data is how do we get enough information, or processes? How do we get enough experience with the process and go through to be adaptable, not to mitigate? Because if you try to mitigate something, you could end up solving the wrong problem. And I can give you an example. Flight 173 that went into Portland, Oregon, I forget when it was. I want to say, it's been a long time ago. Might even be in the 70s. Anyway, landing gear comes down. It didn't actually work the way it was supposed to. The warning light didn't go off. A whole mess of things. So they think they're trying to figure out solve a landing gear problem. They circled in the air too long and ran out of fuel. So instead of adapting to the problem, they trying to mitigate, get rid of the problem, and what happens? They crashed and burned, literally. So how do we take this data on running, like you said, okay, you want 5 to 7 in a queue, but there could be some circumstances that throw stuff in there. And if you try to mitigate it or eliminate it, you could make the problem worse. And I think you touched on this earlier, and that was, well, let's just throw more drivers in there. Well, now you could compound it And now you've got too much
Right.
information in there, too much data in there, and now you've just gone the other way. So we go on and on and on forever. But we should probably save some for
Yeah, well,
later.
that's one thing. Yeah, I mean that's one thing that with data helps you understand like variability, right? And
Yes.
everything's like kind of on a normal, in a sense, distribution, right? There's an average
Yep.
and there's a, so that's where
Yeah.
like looking at your lanes, is it 20 seconds? Is it a minute and a half? Is it 45 to a minute? Once you understand the pace, there's models that I have that like I can share with people that you can plug in the block time, you get the distance, you know how fast a car should be driving, hopefully 15, 20
Yeah.
miles an hour, say, or 20 miles an hour, right? So you know the speed, you know the transfer time, right? And that'll tell you how many drivers you need, right? So there was a site recently I was at that we cut over 20 drivers out of this. It was like $130,000 in savings that we
Jeez.
generated just by running the model, setting it up, and just showing them that hey, we're overstaffed. That's like one of the easiest places to make like quick adjustments on kind of saving the labor. But then sometimes it's like you might cut too much. That's where understanding what are those mitigation type things. If it does start running faster, like how are we going to adjust to make sure we don't run dry, or a car behind the block or after it leaves the block dies or whatever? Do we have the right people in place to jump the car? Or I was noticing a sale a couple weeks ago where a car broke down, and to your point, they were trying to get that car in order through, but by doing it, the lane would dry for like 2 minutes, where they could have just had the car behind it go around the car, keep the flow going, get that car going. Yes, it's going to run out of order, but it's more important to keep the momentum and keep that lane running than get that one car through the block, right? So at what point do you make the call and train your team to know that, hey, let's just move the cars around it, fix that car. Maybe we have to move it out of the way or push the car through to get it going. But
And that is a perfect example of the difference between adapting and mitigating. If you adapt to the problem, you send the
yeah,
other one around, and if you mitigate it, you stop for 2 minutes while you try to solve the problem, which I don't think you want. But now here's
no,
the other thing too, that we haven't covered this yet. But everything you're talking about is all processes, and how do we improve, and how do we do all those things. I call those the 4 Ps: your plans, your processes, your products, and your profits. But you and I've had conversations.
yep,
There's 1 P that I didn't say that has to come in front of this: people. So anybody watching this
yep.
podcast goes home tonight, or after they finish watching, say, tomorrow I'm going to fix my lane, I'm going to put 7 in there. Be careful, because if you forget about the people and you don't take care of them, you're going to end up with a mess. Processes don't build loyalty, people do. You can fix flow, fine-tune operations, and automate reports. But if you don't lead with trust, your results will fade. Thanks for spending time with us today. And if this sparked a new idea, share it with your team. And we'll see you at the next sale.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Meet Me at the Gate. I hope the conversation has helped to fuel your drive and equip you with insights to steer your team towards success. Remember, the road to success is always under construction. And until next time, keep your engines revving and your gas tanks full.